yesterday the question was put on clause 2, and then the majority leader suggested that we should look at it again. So unless we come back at second consideration, then so
I should proceed to clause 3.
Clause 3, the question has been put on clause 3.
On clause 3, so clause 4. Very well.
Activation of fiscal electronic device.
Amendment proposed, Chairman.
Mr. Speaker, clause 4. Amendment proposed, sub-clause 1, line 1. Before person, insert taxable, and in line 3, delete certified. So that clause 4, sub-clause 1 will now read, where a fiscal electronic device assigned to a person is installed by the supplier, that taxable person shall, for purposes of verification, registration, and activation of the device, submit to the supplier a copy of the value-added tax certificate issued by the authority to that person, together with a completed fiscal electronic device registration form.
Very well. For the consideration of the House. I'll put a question. All in favor of the proposed amendment say aye. I didn't hear a voice vote. I'll put it again. All in favor of the proposed amendment? Yes, Honorable Chairman.
Mr. Speaker, I have to take this again. There are two persons here. The taxable would go before person in line 1, subclause 1, line 1, not in line 2. When I was reading, I inserted a taxable before the person in line 2. It should be before the person in line 2.
This kind, clause 4 as amended is ordered to form part of the bill. Clause 5.
Obligation to put fiscal electronic device to appropriate use.
Amendment proposed, standing in the name of the Honorable Minority Leader and Honorable Dafremokbo. Yes, available.
Yeah, right, Honorable Speaker. Clause 5, amendment proposed. Honorable Speaker, I'm doing this on behalf of Leader and Honorable Dafremokbo, with the indulgence of Chairman of the committee.
Yes, Chairman of the committee.
Mr. Speaker, this bill, as alluded to earlier, is a very technical bill. And so when members have proposed amendments, we would think that they will be here to defend why they have proposed those amendments. So if he says he's moving the amendments on their behalf, then I just want to caution that you would go ahead and then also explain why these amendments are being moved. So, so he knows. That's not just the movement.
Leave granted you to propose the amendment on behalf of the two persons.
Mr. Speaker, I thought we have too many people in the House, and it should have been in the interest of the chairman for us to progress. But if he wants to be very technical, that is also a good idea. I'm just looking at the
Honourable Member, available leader, granted you leave to propose the amendment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, amendment proposed, subclause 1, paragraph B, line 2, delete and keep that manual. Mr. Speaker, the reason for this is B, is because to obtain a user manual for the fiscal electronic device from the supplier and keep that manual. We think it should delete and keep that manual and just leave it at manual. And in fact, leave it at device.
Device.
Yes.
Leave it at manual. Yeah,
no, we are deleting and keep
supplier.
that manual there.
Supplier.
Why do you want that deleted? Why?
Speaker, the device is already defined, and there's no need to keep a manual of the device in this particular case. We are talking about a device, so there's no need to keep a manual.
Honorable Chairman, or Honorable Minister, why do the persons who acquire the device need to keep the manual?
Mr. Speaker, it is important that the law reminds employers that as their workers and employees change, it will be necessary to keep this manual and educate employees who may not be there at the time the initial education would happen. And so, Mr. Speaker, to the extent that it's not harmful, I think it should be there to serve as a reminder to employers that these manuals have to be kept. We learned this from our experiences in other countries where education had to happen and again, and people took refuge in the excuse that we do not have the manual. So this is just a reminder that they ought to keep the manual. I think it's not harmful, we should keep it.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, if the intention is to encourage suppliers to keep the manual, why would you make it a law? Why doesn't it go into regulations? Why doesn't it go into administrative fiat? And then you are making it a law, it becomes compulsory that you keep the manual. Because, I mean, it says that for the abundance of caution, so that they can periodically be educated. If that's the intention, you are doing it on advice. You want to advise them. Do it by administrative fiat. Why do you want to put it in the law so that it becomes compulsory that they keep it?
Mr. Speaker, they have to keep it. It should be possible anytime tax authorities visit these employees and these retail outlets to ask about the availability of the manual. That is the only way you can really encourage them when they know that by law they cannot just get these manuals and get them missing, that they have to be there, and the employers have to make sure that these manuals are there for employees and salespersons who may not be at post at the time the education will be happening. It's important that we insist that they keep the manual for this purpose.
Honorable Minister, if I understand you, your intention is not to encourage a situation where the device is not functioning, and the reason is that we can't operate it because there's no manual. So what happens if somebody does not keep the manual? Is there an offense created?
Well, then that becomes an offense. But more importantly, Mr. Speaker, then it takes away that as an excuse, because by law you should keep the manual. So if subsequent salesperson cannot operate and your excuse is that the manual is missing, well, the law is saying that you ought to have kept the manual.
And the appropriate penalties will then apply.
Exactly so, Mr. Speaker.
Very well, members. Do we put the question on it or do you withdraw? Which one?
Mr. Speaker, I think that his explanation is clear. I can withdraw the amendment.
Very well. The proposed amendment, clause 5, is withdrawn. Item number IV, clause 5. Amendment proposed. Chairman of the committee.
Clause 5, amendment proposed. Subclause 1, paragraph C, line 3. Delete physical electronic. Mr. Speaker, so that paragraph C now would read, use the physical electronic device in accordance with the user manual and other instructions given for the use of the device. Mr. Speaker, here we are using physical electronic device in line 1 and again in line 3. We just think more so when device is defined in the interpretation section. So look through the sentencing guidelines and this is what pertains. So for consistency throughout the bill. So.
Very well. The amendment has been proposed for the consideration of the House. Yes, Honorable Deputy Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I agree with the amendment. Yeah, I know. That's what I mean. That, Mr. Speaker, is amendment of the committee. But just to add that this is particularly necessary because if you go to the other tax laws, for instance, the excise tax stamp passed in 2013, you see that the upper limit is actually 5 years. I think for consistency, it's important we lifted this as well. So I respect the committee's. Thank you.
Very well. Yes, Honorable.
Mr. Speaker, normally I wouldn't have risen up. But this bill is supposed to come from the Minister of Finance, but ought to have been advised by the Attorney General's department. And Attorney General ought to. So I was thinking that the Attorney General will be there to tell us that by the Sentencing Fees and Fines Act, this amendment is consistent with it because we are hearing it from the Finance Committee Chairman. I accept what you are saying. Yes, I agree to what you are saying. I'm saying that they should have been there to tell us that this is and not the Finance Committee Chairman. Especially since they were those who drafted the bill for the Finance Ministry.
Very well. I think the information that the AG has advised, that the sentencing guidelines is what is informing this amendment. Yes. So I'll put a question. All in favor of the proposed amendment say aye.
Aye.
All against say no. The ayes have it. Amendment is carried. But how come that the chairman of the committee who proposed the amendment is voting no?
He's voting against it. He's voting against it. You have been recorded.
With this thing.
Very well. Clause 6, item number VII, clause 6. Chairman of the committee.
Mr. Speaker, clause 6. Amendment proposed, subclause 5, line 1. Delete 3 and insert 4. So that it will read without limiting subsection 4. Without limiting subsection, well, not subsection 3, because what we are referencing is subsection 4 and not subsection 3.
Very well. For the consideration of the House, I'll put the question. All in favor of the proposed amendment say aye. All against say no. The ayes have it. The amendment is carried. I'll put a question on clause 6, and the question is that clause 6, as variously amended, shall form part of the bill. All in favor say aye. All against say no. The ayes have it. Clause 6 as amended is ordered to form part of the bill. Clause 7, there's no advertised amendment. I'll put a question.
Records to be kept by fiscal electronic device user.
And the question is that clause 7 shall form part of the bill. All in favor say aye. Aye. All against say no. The ayes have it. The amendment is carried. Clause 7 is ordered to form part of the bill. Clause 8.
Defective or malfunctioning fiscal electronic device.
Honourable members, there's an advertised amendment in the name of Honourable Haruna Idrusu and Roxanne Dafia Makwa. Yes.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, clause 8, amendment proposed. Sub-clause 2, line 2, delete 24 hours and insert 2 working days. Mr. Speaker, the reason for this is that if this happens on Friday evening, 24 hours would have still been within the weekend. So 2 working days is more appropriate if the chairman can consider that.
Yes, Honourable Deputy Minister.
Yeah. Mr. Speaker, I get a sense of what the amendment is seeking to do. And, well, if really the explanation was just that it could be a Friday, then 2 working days would mean that it will take us to Monday. And the real question is that in between those times, I think 3 or 4 days is just too long to allow sales to go on with this uncorrected. And so if the 24 hours is short, we may well want to put 48 hours. I mean, suppliers who have a responsibility to ensure that these devices are repaired as soon as they break down should be able to have arrangements to work over weekends, because you're dealing with sales that happen all the time. So if at all we are minded to vary the 24 hours, we may want to change it to 48 hours. But 2 working days where you have a long holiday, I think would create too long space within which sales will be done outside this device.
The point is yes. Yeah, Mr. Speaker, I fully understand my colleague, the Deputy Minister, but Mr. Speaker, if there are provisions in this that allows the suppliers to use a manual receipt in terms of breakdown, and some repairers may not actually be working over the weekend. So if we tie the hands of the suppliers to the fact that you still must find somebody to repair it, it may be unfair. I think 2 working days, there will not be any justification. It will be difficult to have 4 days holiday in this country, even if you add the weekends to maybe a public holiday. So I think 2 working days may be reasonable period within which they can't have any excuse for not using the electronic device any longer.
Well, Mr. Speaker, you know, to start with, I can appreciate that you want sufficient time within which this repairs will happen. But we need to avert our minds to the fact that this is not a case of a device breaking down and you having to take it to any repairer. There's a contract. The work of the supplier would necessarily include repair services. And because we want to limit as much as possible the period within which manual sales would happen, because then it makes auditing difficult and it begins to work against the overall objective of this, going automation. So I think we should, if we have a contract with you, you know that even on Sundays you could be called upon to do that, and they will be based in the districts. I think we can keep the 24 hours, Mr. Speaker.
Frankly, I think that the memorandum shows what ill we are trying to fight against. The level of dishonesty in reporting is high. So any leverage you allow, you feed into what you're trying, and you defeat the whole purpose. So I suggest that we retain the 24 hours.
Mr. Speaker, he came up with a compromise earlier, then the last minute he went back again. Maybe we adopt his initial compromise, which was the 48 hours, instead of the 24 hours. Unless, yeah.
Very well. I want to hear the 48 hours versus the 24 hours and the 2 working days. Chairman, what do you think?
Mr. Speaker, if you listen to the argument advanced by the Honorable Deputy Minister, we don't want the situation where somebody hides behind the fact that, oh, there's a 48-hour window for me to repair a defective machine, so that all sales done during the period is not captured. So that if you leave it at 24 hours, then you don't have an excuse.
We are saying 48.
Yeah. So I think we should leave it at 24 hours as is in the bill.
Honorable Beja, the sponsor of the bill still think that 24 hours is sufficient. So in that case, to save us all the trouble, just withdraw the proposed amendment so we don't have to vote. Yes, Honorable.
I was also going to implore him to withdraw. Having looked at the objective of the bill, it should be able, the seller should be able to get the supplier to come repair the device, even if we are on holidays. Because if the essence is to plug leakages, then we must not create room where they can exploit the leakages. I think we should maintain the 24 hours, but make it possible for the people to get them to service the machines or repair same. So I pray you to just withdraw and let 24 hours start. So,
Yes.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I think my colleagues have advanced a more superior argument, so I withdraw my proposal.
A proposed amendment to clause 8 is hereby item X, proposed amendment by Chairman of the Committee. Oh, okay. What we did was VIII. All right. IX by Minority Leader and Roxon.
Yes. Mr. Speaker, I think we need to abandon this one as well. Reading the full version of the clause, I think there's a reason why it is this way. I think we would abandon this one as well.
Right.
Very well.
No, we abandon it.
Honorable Minority
I thought the reason why they wanted it was that
It looks
when you say
repetitive.
that it looks repetitive. Well, if you say where a physical electronic device becomes defective or malfunction, the person for whom the device has been installed shall immediately activate the backup. Why do you have to repeat the physical electronic device again? That was why they wanted to do the amendment.
Listen to Honorable Bodo.
Mr. Speaker, if you read the law, you will find that there is a provision.
It's an act, it's the bill.
The bill. If you read it, you find out that there is a specific equipment called backup device. So if reference is made to it in this manner, it is not just the normal device. There is the backup device, which is being referred to in this clause. So for reasons of specificity, we have to maintain that physical electronic device. That's why we seek to abandon the amendment proposed.
Very well. In that case, you will withdraw the amendment.
Mr. Speaker, like he rightly said, we are just deploying a backup of the device, so I don't think it's a problem.
Very well. Leave granted for the application to be withdrawn. X, item X, Chairman of the Committee, amendment.
Mr. Speaker, clause 8, amendment proposed, subclause 4, paragraph B, read draft as follows.
Honourable members, the proposed amendment is for the consideration of the House. Yes, Honourable Majority Chief Whip, Minority Chief Whip.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my worry with this one has to do with when the device either get spoiled or malfunction or for whatever reason is not working. The period that we are using here is within 24 hours. I know you've discussed that earlier, but are you saying that the system cannot be done beyond that stipulated time? And if it does, what happens? If we could avert our mind, because here we are about prescribing punishment. And I want us to, what about if it goes beyond that period? Because you stated the period categorical in subsection 2, where you said it should be within 24 hours. If it goes beyond that, and let's not pretend that it cannot go beyond that. I may not know the type that the suppliers may be supplying, but if it's dependent on electricity is one. If even you have a backup,
remember, we all acknowledge that even both the main device itself and its backup could all be down. When that happens, and it has to be operated beyond that period, what do we do? Because we are about to prescribe punishment for it. I'll be happy to hear from the Deputy Minister what will happen if it goes beyond that period.
Well, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I appreciate the point made, but I mean, there's a limit to what you can do, the safeguards you can put in place. I mean, there's a sense in which, in theory, you could even have 5 backups, and they might all not work within a certain period. So it's not as though we can go on forever. I think when the device breaks down, there's a backup. So you have to replace the backup immediately. You have to replace it with a backup immediately. And then the supplier, who will have a responsibility for the repairs, is being asked to, within 24 hours, rectify the defect. If it doesn't happen, then it's an offense under the law. It's an offense, and the applicable sanctions should apply.
Mr. Speaker, we all remember, I think that was 2 months ago or 3 months ago, when a whole ECG, Electricity Company of Ghana, is it the Accra West, it went down for 1 week, Mr. Speaker. It went down. I mean, people were queuing to pay money. The system is down. And ECG, I mean, I can't imagine any company that may have to use this point of sale device could be bigger than Electricity Company of Ghana. Yet, even ECG went down for a whole week. PURC has to step in, cautioning and what have you. So my worry is that if you had said that they could continue to issue the Commissioner's invoice, the Commissioner General's invoice, until such a problem is resolved, it will have covered you. Because you have made provision where people fraudulently, or with the intention of fraud, are doing it, you made provision for it. But when you say it should be within that specified period of 24 hours, you are saying that if your system goes down and you are issuing even the Commissioner General's invoice, and within 24 hours it is not, the problem is not solved, shut down your business. Is it a practical way of dealing with the problem? Why are you not going to rather, since you've made provision that if you find out that someone fraudulently or with the intention of fraud decide to shut the system down so that he can use any other means, there's a punishment for it. But when there's genuine and sincere reason why the systems are down, it's going to go beyond 24 hours, why are you not going to allow the person to continue to issue the Commissioner General's invoice so that the business can run? But the way we are doing it here, what we mean is that the moment the specified period of 24 hours comes, and if the problem is not solved, then you have to close down your business. Because anything you do then becomes illegal. And that's my worry that you have to think about.
Yes, Honorable Minister, let me hear you.
Mr. Speaker, we need to keep our minds on the mischief we are trying to cure and to see where the real safeguards have to be. You might not have perfect legislation, but if I consider that the objective of this is to rein everybody in, we should be careful with provisions that seem to open the door for people to exploit and do the wrong thing. I am confident that the Commissioner General, in his application of this law and in deciding who to go after, will take all these circumstances into account. It is better to leave it that way and get a Commissioner General to examine the circumstances and even to see where you should activate prosecution than to leave a loophole that could be exploited to hurt the very objective of this law.
Honourable members, all right, let me hear.
Speaker, Mr. Speaker, listening to the Deputy Finance Minister, he seems to be creating a strict liability offense in the provision that you have to ensure that you have a backup, and that backup must be activated when the main device fails to work. And where that backup doesn't work, either by complicity or by negligence or by default, the supplier will be sanctioned.
No, the supplier is allowed to use the Commissioner General's invoice for sales.
That's what the deputy, the whip is saying. That
yes, but he is saying that we should not limit the time period within which you can use the Commissioner General's invoice.
Okay.
That is where the argument is now, that as long as the device and the backup remains unrepaired or the challenge is unresolved, the Commissioner General's invoice should be, and the minister is saying that is just as good as saying that you can continue to use it and you defeat the purpose of the bill. That's where I tend to agree with that.
I get it. I was thinking that there was no avenue for the use of the manual receipt, but as much as possible, we must try to limit the time frame that it can be used. I now see it. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, Honorable.
Mr. Speaker, I think I support the position of whip. Mr. Speaker, I have a practical example where hospital equipment are under warranty, maybe an MRI or a CT scanner. The manufacturer is GE or Philips or something. The hospital actually signs a warranty with them. Within 48 hours or something will repair it. But they come up with a very good reason why the part cannot be flown to this place. They have the part, maybe the airlines didn't work. I think 24 hours is a bit too harsh. Chances are that you are saying that the supplier should have maybe outlet everywhere, including Adaklu. Where the supplier attempts to take the equipment to Adaklu, and maybe there's a rainstorm, and as you've heard in this house, the road to where the supplier is has been cut off because the road doesn't exist. Are you saying that even with that, there will be penalties? I think it's a wrong thing. The 24 hours is what is putting us in a tight corner now. Maybe we can step this particular one down for the chairman and the minister to reconsider.
Maybe what I just want to.
Yes, Honorable Deputy Minister, before. No, I mean, not you, Cook. Yes, Bamford.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I think this is a very critical thing that we must look at it carefully. Backups are made for emergency issues, unless until by any specific intentional means that it will then be caused in that manner for that long period. For example, if you have generators who are supposed to be firing your electricity power, even in 5 seconds or 1 second, the purpose of it is that it must be apt and all the time in that situation to address the issue. So, Mr. Speaker, I believe the 24 hours is okay. In industrial practice, parts and certain things that we call the wearable parts should be always available, and it's the responsibility of the supplier. So, Mr. Speaker, I deem it appropriate that we keep it as it is and make sure that we don't open the window for people to pry into it and do all sorts of things. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes.
Let me help my colleague. This house, the vice chair. Mr. Speaker, this house.
He's the vice chair.
Will procure
He's not the vice chair. He's not
to be
the
able
vice
to
chair.
change over in 15 seconds.
Yes.
In 15 seconds. Mr. Speaker, I don't know whether my colleague was there, but Mr. Speaker, I remember you were here. On more than 10 occasions, brand new generators that were installed, that were being maintained, refused to respond.
Yes.
And on 3 or 4 of such occasions, we had to adjourn to the next day, this house. But these were generators that Parliament invested in and had all the, because while you are dealing with electronics,
Yes.
meanwhile, what I'm saying is that the idea 24 hours for where you have to replace is good. But I'm saying that when now you are making provision where the possibility of the backup is a fail, and you are saying that the person can use the Commissioner General's invoice, yet you want to go and lock up the Commissioner General's invoice usage by that 24 hours. That is where I have a deal, because then you are assuming that at all costs, because without citing personal examples, I know a business 4 days ago who had 2 other backups. They are using a laptop. There's a backup which is laptop and another backup that is desktop. When they call in for it, all the 2 fail. Because sometimes if it's being used and the other backup is idling for long, because it is an electronic, you don't know the challenges that come. So all I'm saying is that allow the Commissioner General's invoice to be used until such a time that the Commissioner General, give the Commissioner General the discretion, because what the Minister himself is saying, Mr. Speaker, here is that the Commissioner General will look at the cases and determine which one is deliberate, which one to prosecute in his statement, that depending on the circumstances. But how you are couching the law, you do not give that discretion to the Commissioner General. Once the person goes outside the 24 hours, the person is guilty. So I'm saying that if you want to give the discretion to the Commissioner General, provide it now, so that, yes, it should be within the 24 hours, but where in a genuine situation, give the Commissioner General the leverage. Because if you don't provide it now, he will not have that leverage that you are thinking, that he could choose and pick. He will have to prosecute that person simply because you've gone beyond the 24 hours. I'm for the 24 hours, but I'm saying that think about where this, in very sincere situation, is down. Because if you ask the business to shut down, then you'll be finding yourself having too many problems, because they will shut down simply because their point of sales device and their backup is not responding. When maybe a supplier is the one not being able to fix it, the person will not. So provide those leverage for the Commissioner General so that he will be able to do the work. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Honorable Deputy Minister.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. Mr. Speaker, the reason for which clause 8.2 and 8.3 are constructed the way they are is to, as much as possible, take out discretion and space for both the supplier and even the Commissioner General to decide where and when to apply this law. We want to be very clear that as much as possible, we want the system to work, and that it is only within that 24-hour period where, for some technical reason, it's not functioning, that is allowed to use the Commissioner General's invoice. Now, if, Mr. Speaker, for some reason that is palpable on the face, the supplier has not been able to address this situation within 24 hours, and just for the purpose of argument, the Commissioner General is compelled to even prosecute, I don't believe that any court of competent jurisdiction will look at the bare facts on the face and say that in spite of that, he will proceed to convict. But it is structured this way to ensure that there's literally no leeway or no room. Else, when you open the floodgates that way, people will now find various excuses and reasons for which they will begin to extend the time. A quick example, the Electoral Commission, for example, when it's using these biometric devices, because the obligation is on the EC, that when the machine goes down, it needs to bring another one. It is compelled and it finds all ways to ensure that when one machine goes down, another one is provided. So I think that as it's structured now, it's fine. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable members, I think the position should be clear. I keep going back to the memo. This is all because there's dishonesty. We know it. So as soon as you continue to allow more windows, they will expand it to warehouses. The windows will become warehouses. So we should just keep it as it is. When people have genuine excuses, I'm sure the Commissioner General will listen. But we should not, through the law, provide windows which are exploitable. I'll put the question now. All in favor of the proposed amendment, say aye. Aye. All against, say no. The ayes have it. The amendment is carried. Item number XI, Clause 8. Chairman of the committee.
Mr. Speaker, Clause 8. Amendment proposed, Subclause 5. Line 4, delete where and insert where. Mr. Speaker, I think the actual word should have been where, W-E-R-E, not where. So this is just a simple drafting matter.
Yes, honorable members, for the consideration of the House. I'll put a question. All in favor of the proposed amendment say aye. Aye. All against say no. The ayes have it. The amendment is carried. XII, Clause 8. Chairman of the committee.
Mr. Speaker, Clause 8. Amendment proposed. Subclause 6, lines 3 to 5. Delete or to a term of imprisonment of not less than 2 years and not more than 4 years, or to both. Mr. Speaker, I think the custodial sentence is the one that's been taken off here.
Yeah. Because we don't want to criminalize.
Here we're trying to.
By this you mean that the judge is constrained to apply only the penalty units, the fines?
Yes. Because, Mr. Speaker, if you read this well, we were trying to impose a custodial sentence on the supplier who fails to repair the malfunction device within, and that one didn't sit well with the committee, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, let me understand what they want before. You don't want people to be committed to prison, I agree, but by our rules, once a person is sentenced to a fine and he fails or refuses to pay, the custodial sentence must apply. So what do you propose to do in case of default? Yes, Honorable Chief.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Exactly what I was going to say, but except to even add, when you start using the point of sales device and you have a supplier who targets a particular business, and you are now going to make it possible for that person to escape blame and just pay a fine. If I know Honorable Bright has a business that makes $1 million Ghana cedis a day, and I want to frustrate because he has a competitor, and when anytime his system goes down, for me to repair within the 24 hours, I don't do it. I just go to pay money, and then he continues to suffer, especially now that you are not allowing him to be able to issue the Commissioner General's invoice beyond the 24 hours. You need to keep the custodial sensor aside the person even failing to pay. Because look, when you are dealing with electronics, Mr. Speaker, a lot of people who have not operated within the electronics or the internet system do not know how people try to sabotage others. Let it be there, so that if the person knows that once I accept to be a supplier of these devices, these are the challenges, the person will also work very hard to make sure that within those 24 hours, he will keep those business people running without frustrating them. But if it is just to pay money, and I have a competitor who will say that, look, you frustrate him, the payment, oh, it's just 1,000 penalty units, is 12,000. I will pay the 20,000 for you, don't worry. And then the business person, but if there is, and a judge sees that each time you come, you are willing to pay, the judge will then say, oh, there's some deliberateness. You now want to imprison you, which nobody wants. And you want to take that one away. Mr. Speaker, they should think again. I think this must stay, so that whoever is supplying, apart from the possibility of the person not paying and going to prison, if you are deliberately doing it to some businesses, there should be a possible for a judge to say that, yes, this time we won't take your money, or we'll take your money, but we'll still punish you to restrain your movement by putting you into prison, so that you do your work well. So I am pleading with the chairman to maintain this, so that those who are providing the devices will also know, just like those who are operating the business, will all be careful about the way they operate, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much.
Let me listen to the Deputy Minister. Yes, then I'll come to you. Deputy Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, to start with, the conduct that this law is seeking to regulate and to rein in is the conduct of retailers. So once you move a step up to deal with those supplying the device to those retailers, in my respectful opinion, the risk is minimized. It's not taken away completely, and I do agree that you could have connivance between suppliers and retailers to give an excuse to a supplier, to give an excuse to a retailer not to sell through the device. But we should remember that these are going to be licensed suppliers. So if the authority believes that beyond this fine, you still have been intransigent, then the authority would exercise its power to take your license from you. It is just being considered that, and this discussion happened at the committee level, Mr. Speaker, that where you have a supplier that actually is a company that has workers, some of whom may just be negligent and may even disappear without giving prior notice to the company for which they work, we should be careful the way we impose custodial sentence. That is why it was considered that we can restrict it to the fine, and then the commissioner, the authority, the Ghana Revenue Authority, where they consider that a particular supplier is problematic, then they would exercise their power to take their license from them.
Honourable members, may I suggest that we stand this down and think through it. I understand what we want. We want to punish by fines, but we do not want those who default to go to prison. If I recall correctly, there's a provision in the Criminal Offences Act relating to setting charges or fines in which there's the person, the beneficiary of the fine, is authorized to use a civil process to recover it. So we can look at a situation where even for a recalcitrant person, you can, in addition to deregistering the person, the fines that are already imposed on the person can be recovered. So, Chairman and Minister, may I suggest that we stand this down and think through it again? Yes.
I was tempted to move the minority whip, but I went back to 8.2. And what is the duty of the supplier? His duty is to rectify the defect or replace the malfunctioning physical electronic device within 24 hours. That's his duty. And if he defaults that, if he fails to do that, he goes to jail for 2 years. I think it will be too harsh. I think so. And that is why I'm tempted to go there. You think he should go to jail? That's a duty.
Yes, Honourable Deputy Minister.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, we are not challenging your direction on this, but just to aid the conversation, and in line with the suggestion earlier, the current construction does not even allow this fine to be graduated. It appears that it's just 500 penalty units and not more than 2,000 penalty units. But if the desire is to create a disincentive for people not to deliberately stay in this place, but not necessarily to take them to jail, then maybe in our consideration, as you have directed, we could think about graduating it by the day, by the number of days that it stays unrepaired.
Yes, Honourable Kodo.
Mr. Speaker, it is true that this kind of offense is a business offense, and it's not any community's desire to be sending people to jail when they commit business offenses. It's not essentially criminal acts of the kind. But again, it is important to deter people from, committing this kind of offense because they know they are not going to jail. My other point is that there is a correlation between the penalty units and then the jail term. I am not too sure whether the AG can tell us that 500 penalty units correlate to a term of 2 years, because that's the minimum. If that does not, if that's the correlation, then we have to maintain it as a deterrent. But if it is possible to bring down the term in custody, that will be preferable, because I think it's a business offense which should not keep you 2 complete years out of the system. So I will suggest that we can reduce the jail term.
Yeah, to 6 months.
Yes, to 6 months.
We are stepping the thing down.
And yes, but when we step it down and we go for reconsideration, these are the issues we should be thinking of. So we can reduce the jail term, but have it in the bill, so that it will be a deterrent to anyone who plans to violate.
I think what you want is an administrative fine, and not a criminal fine.
Mr. Speaker, as the former President Rawlings said, the essence of winning political power is not to free people out of jail. So we don't want to commit people to jail and later attempt to.
Oh, Chairman, you're out of order.
Order.
You're out of order. If I understand correctly, what we want is an administrative fine. I think we did some legislation recently in which those things have been provided for. So I direct that this clause amendment is stood down so that we find the appropriate wording to achieve the purpose we want to. Can we proceed to clause 9 instead? Yes. Clause 9.
Yes, Right Honourable Speaker. Clause 9, amendment proposed. Sub-clause 2, paragraph D, line 1, after person, insert who, and also delete A, and insert the. So it would read
The name.
9(2)D, the name and designation of the person who made the report of the malfunction of the device.
Honourable members, it is for the consideration of the House. I think it's a.
We agree.
I think it's an amendment that is deserving. So I'll put a question. All in favor of the proposed amendment, say aye. Aye. All against, say no. The ayes have it. The amendment is carried. Item number XIV, clause 9. Chairman of the committee.
Mr. Speaker, in view of the earlier amendment moved by the member for Adapu, I think we will abandon ours.
Very well.
They only put the
XIV
before the cat.
is abandoned. So I'll put a question on clause 9 as amended. The question is, clause 9 as amended shall form part of the bill. All in favor say aye. Aye. All against say no. The ayes have it. Clause 9 as amended is ordered to form part of the bill. Clause 10.
Error in issuing fiscal receipt.
Proposed amendment in the name of all the chairman, leader, and so on. So can the chairman move the amendment?
Mr. Speaker, clause 10. Amendment proposed, line 1. After employee, insert off.
Honourable members, I'll put a question. All in favor of the proposed amendment say aye. Aye. All against say no. The ayes have it. The amendment is carried. Item number XVI. Amendment proposed. Yes, Honourable Honourable Member for the Cruz.
Abandoning the one also, Mr. Speaker.
Oh, very well. In that case, I'll put the question. There's one more. Yes, XVII. Chairman.
Mr. Speaker, Clause 10, amendment proposed, paragraph B, line 1, after receipt, insert on.
Honourable members, the question is, all in favor of the proposed amendment say aye. Aye. All against say no. The ayes have it, the amendment is carried. I'll put a question on clause 10 as amended. The question is, clause 10 as amended shall form part of the bill. All in favor say aye. Aye. All against say no. The ayes have it, the amendment is carried. Clause 10 as amended, so that to form part of the bill. Item number XVII, clause 11, Chairman of the Committee.
Return of goods sold.
Yes, Chairman of the Committee.
Clause 11, amendment proposed. Line 4, delete certified.
For the consideration of the House, I'll put a question. All in favor of the amendment say aye. Aye. All against say no. The ayes have it. The amendment is carried. I'll put a question on clause 11 as amended. And the question is, clause 11 as amended shall form part of the bill. All in favor say aye. Aye. All against say no. The ayes have it. The amendment is carried. Clause 11 as amended is ordered to form part of the bill. Honourable members, clause 12.
Deregistered person.
There is no advertised amendment for clause 12, so I'll put the question. And the question is, all in favor of clause 12 being part of the bill, say aye. Aye. All against say no. The ayes have it. Clause 12 is ordered to form part of the bill. Clause 13.
Truncated use of physical electronic device.
Yes, Honourable Member for other.
Mr. Speaker, for consistency's sake, I think we abandon this because the rendition is better. What's the problem?
Very well. The amendment is hereby abandoned. Yes.
Mr. Speaker, I was actually going to support that one.
There's no amendment.
Well, there's no foreclosure. You can still move your own amendment if you so desire.
Mr. Speaker, then I would like to move my own proposed amendment that in subclause 1, line 4, we delete 2 working days and insert 24 hours. The reason is that in the instance where the device is malfunctioning, we are giving a 24-hour window, imposing an obligation on the supplier to either replace or fix. But if that one is very pressing to us, then for consistency purposes as well, in an instance where it has been stolen or for some other reason is not available, at least a report, because in this clause 13 talks about a report where a physical electronic device is truncated as a result of being stolen or being disabled through any other means. The person to whom the device is assigned shall make a report of that fact. So if the replacement or the repair must be done within 24 hours, why are we giving 2 days to make a report of sale? The report can even be made in a shorter period. And that's why initially I would have supported, but now I'm moving that particular amendment as they have abandoned it.
Yes,
Honourable Speaker, the difference here is that the report, it's an official document. Assuming it's a Saturday breakdown, the offices are not going to be open on Saturday and Sunday. So 2 working days.
would be more appropriate because GRA would probably not be open on Saturday and Sunday.
Yes, Honorable Chief.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Also to say that trying to get the supplier to replace it are two different things to report it to authority and the police. So they are not on the same leg. Because for getting the supplier to replace it, you are told to do it within 24 hours, with the assumption that the supplier will be at call 24/7. But to report to police and the authority, if they are not working or there's a holiday, I think that's why
police always work.
You say? No, we are not talking. It's not only the police here. You are using both the police and the authority.
Yeah.
That is why that has to be 2 working days. So I think it is useful they abandon the amendment because they are working on different legs. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes,
thank you,
Honorable Deputy Minister.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think at the committee level, this discussion came up, and the point of the 2 working days is to provide enough space in cases where, for instance, the shop has gone up in flames, or traumatic circumstances under which the retailer needs sympathy and not this kind of strict requirement. So the idea was to create sufficient room so that within 48 hours you can report to the appropriate authorities, which is why I still suggest that, Mr. Speaker, we keep it as 2 working days.
Again, since you're making it an offense, if he doesn't report to the authority, then if you give him 24 hours and the authority, the theft is discovered on Friday evening, in 24 hours is Saturday, the authority is not working. Do you punish him for the authority not working, even though it was not practicable for him to make the complaint? So I think if it were the police alone, the 24 hours would have been sufficient. But because we're dealing with the authority, which works within a certain period, I think the 2 working days is reasonable. Anyway, there's still a motion which has not been abandoned. I've passed a judgment without putting the question. So, yes, Honorable.
I'm just going to crave the indulgence of my good friend to withdraw his amendment. You know, as a lawyer, you know, even where there's a crime, you have a time limit within which to report to the police. In this particular case, within the metropolis or any other place, there's a time limit within which to report. And in this particular case, we are saying that it's not only the police, but the authority. And you know that the police, even though they work 24 hours 7, but the authority doesn't work that way. And so I just crave your indulgence. Just withdraw and then we can proceed.
Yes, Honorable.
Accordingly,
I've granted you leave to withdraw it. Very well. Honourable members, there's one more amendment to clause 30. Let's take that and then bring the proceedings to a close.
Mr. Speaker, clause 13.
XX.
Yeah, clause 13, amendment proposed. Subclause 2, lines 2 and 3. Delete 1,000 and insert 500. Mr. Speaker, this is just to align this with the earlier ones. Wherever we had these penalty units, they started from 500 and up to 2,000. So for consistency, once again.
Yes, Honourable Leader.
Mr. Speaker, my worry with this is the penalty units goes with the imprisonment, the terms.
yes.
So as you are reducing and you are not making them consistent, it becomes a problem. So if you are deleting 1,000 and inserting 500, what happens to the incarceration, the period for imprisonment? Because they are supposed to have correspondence. It's not, you just don't mention the penalty units and choose a different prison terms. So maybe if you can say the drafters should look at the corresponding prison terms, I think that becomes neater than just reducing the penalty unit without reference to the term of imprisonment.
Member for Wa West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If you look at my notes indicate that after changing the 1,000 to 500, you also delete the last, there's 5 years. And so 3 years is the one that should correspond to what we are saying. But we have asked the draft persons to look at the correspondence. That is, if you say 500 penalty units, in the event that it is not that, what should be the term of imprisonment? So I think, I mean, we can, yeah, but we can, you know.
We can put the question and direct the Attorney General's Department to provide the corresponding sentences to the fines we want. Yes, Honorable.
Mr. Speaker, I come back to, I fail to see the rationale for reducing the penalty unit or the fine for non-compliance with this provision from 1,000 penalty units to 500. Because if the whole essence of this bill is to close loopholes and then provide deterrent sentencing regime for people who willfully fail to comply, why are you making it more amenable, more easy for them to walk to the authorities and pay 500 and still default? That is where I don't understand. In one vein, Mr. Speaker, and I agree entirely with you, in one vein we are saying that, look, people must not be given an opportunity at all to misbehave with this bill. And in another vein, we are saying that, well, if you fail within 2 days to report, you don't pay 1,000 penalty units. Go and pay 500. Why should that be so?
Yes, Honorable Majority Chukwu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, 13.2 provides a lower limit and an upper limit. 1,000 Ghana cedis was the lower limit, which has been reduced further to 500 Ghana cedis. The upper limit remains 2,500. So it gives room to manipulate between 500 and 2,500. So the ceiling is there. The upper ceiling is there. 13.2. So depending on the gravity of the offense, the judicial officer may decide whether to say 500, award 500 penalty units, or the maximum of 2,500. There should be some flexibility in the administration of the law.
Yes, Chairman.
Mr. Speaker, we conferred with the AG. Now, if you go to the sentencing guidelines, 500 penalty. Mr. Speaker, if you go to the sentencing guidelines, 500 penalty units equates to 2 years. 2 years. So, because we had 2 years as the minimum custodial sentence, that's why we revised this one downward from 1,000 to 500. And then the upper limit too, this is 2,500, and that one also equates to 5 years. So that is just, it was for the lower custodial sentence that we had to do some rectification here. So everything is fine, as the chairman says. Everything is fine. Let's put the question, Chairman.
Let me hear the drafting.
Mr. Speaker, if you look at the issue he's raising, you look at the offense, it shouldn't be as punitive as he's talking about. It is as a result of something being stolen or something being, so, I mean, how can the infringement on this be punitive as you want it to be? Why would that be the case? So, apart from that, you see, the things, these things that we want to encourage people to use them. But if you make this so, I mean, punitive that people don't want, they will be hiding one or two things. So I think that the sentence as it is should be accepted as, and not that we are making it less punitive.
I think in this case, the offense is your failure to report. The offense created is your failure to report. That's all. So I don't know, but I think the 500 is reasonable when a person, even in that distressed condition, fire or theft, he fails to report, he has still committed an offense. But we should give sufficient latitude to the judicial officer to determine that in the circumstances, which is the appropriate punishment. Yes, Honorable Chief.
Mr. Speaker, I will call that maybe we need to stand this and look at it well. The reason why I'm saying this, Mr. Speaker, to stand this and look at it very well. Why should reporting even attract this high punishment? Even the 500 is too high. The reason is that, Mr. Speaker, if you look at what we did in 6 to 8, once the device is not there, you are supposed to get a supplier to bring it within 24 hours. If you don't, or even your backup fails, you can issue the Commissioner General's invoice up to 24 hours, and you must stop operating. So, and the punishments have been provided there. The person's items have been stolen, devastated. You said that within 2 working days, if he or she doesn't go to report to the police, which has nothing to do with the device and its replacement, that one alone should attract this harsh punishment. Let's be careful. Mr. Speaker, remember, I don't know whether Mr. Speaker was in this house when we did the traffic offense. You are DVLA. And we thought that was going to solve the carnage on our roads. We ended up putting so many people behind bars unnecessarily because we have made it so rigid that the judges' hands are tied. So the moment you come, they either slump you with the high penalty units, you can't, then you go to prison. Let's be careful because you have provided enough mechanism to prevent people from trying to operate without the device. But not only reporting to, that one too should attract 2 years and 500 penalty. 500 penalty, Mr. Speaker, is
come out,
one penalty unit is 12 cities.
Yes.
500 penalty unit is 6,000 for just not reporting. So I decided to close my business trying to get the device. Then I forgot that 2 days has even come. I'm not going to report. That one alone should attract 6,000. Let's be realistic in what we are doing. Let's put ourselves, for those of us who are business people, in the business operation and so the challenge that goes with it. I've got a device not to operate so that you don't hide things. I agree. And the punishment. But not to report alone, you want it to be 500 penalty.
Honorable Chief Whip, are we going to put a point of sale device at the entrance of your farm for the planting or which one? Yes.
The law is not for good businessmen like him. This law is not for good businessmen like the Chief Whip. They are for businessmen who will cut corners. But Mr. Speaker, I agree with you now and the chairman's explanation that lowering the threshold is consistent with the act. So I agree. But somebody could decide that he's going to, by himself, steal the device and not report. So these are the type of businessmen the law is targeting. The businessman who will steal the device and not report, not the type of you who is a genuine businessman. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Let me listen to Bodo and then I'll listen to you. Okay. Yes, Honorable.
Mr. Speaker, I think what my colleague said shouldn't have gone to the public. There are many genuine businessmen who don't have the devices. So this law is meant to get everybody to own and use it. It is not only for unscrupulous business people, because if we give this information out, then genuine people say, as for me, I'm genuine, so I don't need the device.
I think it's on the lighter side.
I think you should explain that it's on the lighter side to exclude our
but it's not on the lighter side. Laws are made because there are deviant people who will depart from the norm. And indeed, it is because you want to keep the deviant people within the norm that you prescribe rules. Don't go right. If you turn right, you have breached the law. Ordinary 90 people without the law will not turn right. But those 10 people, if you don't put the law and punish them, they'll always turn right. And they'll make the country unsafe. So he's not wrong in saying that it is for bad people. That is actually appropriate. Yes, Honorable Deputy Finance Minister.
I will request that we step this down, and I do so because if you look carefully, the earlier clause under 8, where we consider defective and malfunction of the device, is a provision for replacement and how you report and its replacement and the repairs and all that. And in 13, we seem to be dealing just with the reporting of the truncation of the use of the device without really making provision for a replacement. I get a sense that if there was such a provision, then we could load the stiff requirements there, that whether it got missing by accident or by somebody's engineering, as for the replacement, if you go default on it, then it's a heavy punishment. It is the absence of that which is driving the point about making this punitive. So if, Mr. Speaker, you permit us, we step this down, and then we will introduce a provision that takes care of the replacement in cases of truncation of use, and then we will load that to be a deterrent to those who will be tempted to explore this.
You're right. If the person reports, then what? Or if he fails to report, can he operate with the commissioner's invoice and so on? Those must be provided for. And in that regard, Clause 13, the decision on Clause 13 is hereby deferred. Remember, it is 2:10, and it is time to bring the proceedings for the day to a close. Consequently, I hereby adjourn. Very well, sorry. That is the end of consideration. Honourable members, the House is adjourned till Thursday, the 1st of March 2018 at 10 o'clock in the forenoon.